Hello, and welcome to Scream Scene, the horror movie podcast where we watch every horror movie ever made in chronological order, and then we rank them from best to worst. My name's Ben.
And I'm Sarah.
Thank you so much for listening to us today. How you doing today, Sarah?
I'm doing all right. It is a pretty hot weekend.
Yeah.
So I'm basically living in the basement, but doing all right. How are you?
I am also doing pretty good. I was about to say I can't complain, but I certainly can.
That's never true.
Yeah. It's too hot, and it's also very smoky outside from forest fires, which means that we can't easily alleviate the heat by like opening up windows, because then you let all the smoke in and it's unpleasant. And like there's other things I could certainly complain about, but like overall, I'm doing pretty good.
Yeah. I do have some good news, Ben.
Oh, yeah?
So we are welcoming back our patron, Karsa Torvald, to our Patreon.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thanks for coming back, Karsa. Totally understand when people need to take a step back and then come back to Patreon. I do that myself with folks I follow on there. So it's really great to have you back. So thank you for coming back.
Thank you.
So what are we watching today?
Tonight, Sarah, we are watching La Ragazza Che Sapeva Troppo, which is The Girl Who Knew Too Much from 1963, directed by Mario Bava.
Exciting.
So,
what do you think she knew too much of? Like, do you think she had too many, like, ocean facts?
We're going to find out tonight when we watch the film. So, the title is a reference to a famous Alfred Hitchcock movie that we've actually mentioned on the show before. It's The Man Who Knew Too Much, which he made in the 30s with Peter Lorre. It was Peter Lorre's first English role, and then he remade it in the 50s. But there's another movie called The Girl Who Knew Too Much that was a Hollywood movie that came out in 1969 that has nothing to do with this movie, because this movie had a different title in the United States. And that Girl Who Knew Too Much, it's a like gritty thriller starring Adam West as like a hired killer because he was trying to break out of his like Batman type casting.
Fascinating.
Anyways, this movie, La Ragazza Che Sapeva Troppo, is generally considered to be the first giallo film, which is a big deal.
Yeah, we've kind of circled the subgenre here and there because genres and subgenres don't appear out of nothing.
Exactly.
But yeah, I'm very excited to see the first. Do you know a lot about giallo?
So like I do know about giallo and
Yeah.
I know things about it, but there are people who are way more into giallo than I am.
Okay.
But you know, I might get more into it over the course of doing this show and watching more of them. But I was hoping that you could tell our listeners a little bit more about it.
Absolutely. So giallo means yellow in Italian, and that kind of speaks to its origins in pulp literature. But I do just want to like acknowledge that for an Italian audience, giallo is just a regular old genre name. Like it would be the way that you would describe like a police procedural, a mystery, thriller, psychological horror. Like it would just be the same way that we would describe like thriller. But for, I'll say, English speakers, giallo kind of specifically speaks to the Italian subgenre of its particular approach to thriller and horror film.
Right. Like if I say spaghetti western, it's going to put a specific style of movie in your mind that is distinct from like a 1950s John Ford western, but like everybody in Italy is just calling those westerns.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So where the name giallo comes from, cast your mind back to like 1920s. Pulp magazines, pulp stories are a really big literary genre. You can buy them for like $1, if even that. Like,
yeah, probably not $1 in 1920 something.
that's
probably
fair.
like a dime.
You can buy them for like $0.10 for a quick read. It's like the airport book rack of the 20s. In Italy, there's a publishing company called Arnaldo Mondadori Editore. And this publishing company had a few different lines of genre books, but their mystery crime novels had this very distinct yellow cover. And it was like this yellow cover with an illustration of what's going on inside the book, kind of in a circle kind of design on the cover. The style of it really made me think of like the Hardy Boys, where they had that very particular blue cover.
Sure, yeah.
And then like an illustration of the Hardy Boys. Now, this is just good branding on the part of this publishing company because they called the line like the yellow mystery line.
Right.
And they colored them yellow. Like, just makes a lot of sense. They started publishing these in 1929, and while they would have some like Italian and European authors, this publishing line really focused on translations of American pulp mystery novels.
Got it.
From like Agatha Christie, Edgar Wallace, and others. Now, the first film to capitalize on the popularity of giallo books is a 1933 film called Giallo.
Okay.
It's directed by Mario Camerini, and it's a horror comedy based on an Edgar Wallace play called The Man Who Changed His Name, which is also interesting considering like the rhythm of that title and the rhythm of The Girl Who Knew Too Much.
Right.
It's not a giallo film in the sense of what we mean with like the film genre, but it is the first to kind of go like, hey, these giallo literary books put to film.
Yeah.
Now, we've seen some proto-giallo with some earlier Italian films, even with some of Bava's earlier work. And the way that we can identify these as like proto-giallo is with some of the key characteristics of this film genre, namely that there's a black-gloved killer who has a hidden identity that we don't get to see. The movie is very focused on trying to identify who this killer is. There is a lot of blood and gore. If they can use color, they absolutely do. It's very vibrant color. People kept kind of using the word eroticism, but definitely like sexy elements, some like, you know, rated M for mature style sexual themes, a focus on solving a crime. And honestly, I also would kind of describe it as like film noir in Italy. Because like film noir, that's obviously like a French name for a genre. In giallo, like we get some of those similar film noir themes, but well as seeing some of that similar chiaroscuro lighting. I would even go so far as to call some things a little bit more gothic than just film noir, because it's straddling that line of like mystery to thriller to horror. So not all giallo is going to be horror, because it does straddle that like film noir, detective, police procedural. Think also of like, what was that genre in the 90s? Like sexual thriller?
Erotic thrillers.
Erotic thriller. I think you could also say that giallo has elements of that. But horror is definitely a part, a stream, if you will, in the broader giallo genre.
Right.
So many languages in this podcast today. So yeah, that's kind of what giallo is as a film genre.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing about giallo is the way that, as you pointed out in earlier episodes of this podcast, like way earlier, we pointed out the way that the stylistic elements of film noir kind of evolved out of German expressionism and therefore have like a root in horror cinema. And here we see like film noir elements sort of feeding back into this like horror subgenre. And one of the reasons why giallo is really important for the development of horror is, yeah, you've got this like mystery killer who always has the black gloves and you don't see anything else. And we've seen that black glove thing used to obscure the identity of a murderer in earlier horror movies, but like it becomes a trademark in giallo. And I feel like the other big trademark in giallo is like the murders themselves being set pieces.
Yeah.
Where the killing in movies is not just like, and then he like grabs the girl's throat and strangles her off camera, like where the kills start to like kind of become part of the point of the movie.
Yeah, which also ties into the slasher subgenre.
Exactly. And slasher becomes such a popular subgenre of horror in America like 20 years from now that for a whole generation of people, it became synonymous with horror, basically.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's really important that we look at these giallo films. So this is a Mario Bava film, as I mentioned. The last film from him that we saw was the seminal La Maschera del Demonio, aka Black Sunday, which was back in 1961 and which currently ranks number 28 on the list.
He hit it hard.
Yeah.
I mean, his earlier projects rank a little lower than that, but, he keeps getting better.
Yeah. In the intervening time, he had done a number of historical fantasy films. So Hercules in the Haunted World, Eric the Conqueror, which is kind of Viking times, and The Witch's Curse, which is more medieval. Bava took a 6-month break after finishing the special effects work for Eric the Conqueror, because Bava always did the special effects for his movies himself. And he spent this 6-month break reading mystery and horror magazines, reading some giallo, basically.
As you do.
He even thought about retiring at this time.
Oh, really?
Getting out of the game.
But yeah, I mean, he's only done, directed 4 movies, but he's been a cinematographer for a long time.
Exactly. But Samuel Arkoff and James Nicholson came a-calling because they wanted to get AIP into co-producing Italian features, and they wanted Bava's next film to be the first project because they had done the U.S. release of Black Sunday and it had been very successful.
So were they looking to do a similar thing to how AIP worked with Hammer and the UK film market?
Yeah, the idea of we're not just going to distribute your film in the US, we're going to put up some of the money for it.
Yeah, and then you have an English speaking star.
Yeah. This new project, La Ragazza che Sapeva Troppo, named for the man who knew too much, was produced in Italy by Galatea and Coronet Films, who had also produced La Maschera del Demonio. The film was written by a team of writers, including Ennio De Concini, who had worked on Black Sunday, Sergio Corbucci, who would later go on to write and direct Django, Mino Guerrini, Franco Prosperi, Eliana de Sabata, and Bava himself.
That doesn't always bode well, having a team of writers.
Yeah, this diverse team brought a lot of different elements to the film. There's some romantic comedy in here. There's some thriller in here. There's a lot of different elements, creating a script that ultimately tells a story that is perhaps a little far-fetched.
Okay.
Perhaps doing a little too much here.
That's what she knew.
That's fair. So the lead role is played by Letitia Roman. This was her first starring role in a film. She was born in Rome to actress Giuliana Gianni and writer Nino Novarese in 1941. Her parents did not want her to become an actress, and they paid for her to be educated by tutors, and she learned 5 languages, and then she used one of those languages to go to Hollywood to become an actress.
Sure.
She studied under Meisner, and she worked really hard to try and diminish her accent. And her early roles included appearing in Elvis Presley's GI Blues in 1960. And The Girl Who Knew Too Much was her first lead role. In 1964, she appeared in sexploitation director Russ Meyer's adaptation of Fanny Hill. And she retired from acting in 1966 to marry and raise a family. Now, as was common for Italian films of this era, and as you already guessed, Bava wanted a Hollywood lead for this movie, and so Letitia Roman knew actor John Saxon from being in Hollywood, and she asked him if he would like to come out and shoot an art film in Rome, and he agreed, and then found upon arrival that he had misunderstood her, and it was actually a horror film, which began some friction between Saxon and the production. So John Saxon was born Carmine Orrico in Brooklyn in 1936 to an Italian-speaking family, and he grew up speaking Italian.
Oh, that's useful.
As a teenager, he was scouted by a modeling agent, and that brought him to the attention of Henry Wilson, Rock Hudson's agent, who signed him to Universal under the name John Saxon. He started out playing juvenile delinquents in films in the 50s, with his breakout role being Rock Pretty Baby in 1956, which made him a teen idol. As he aged out of those kinds of roles, he began appearing in westerns like The Unforgiven and Posse from Hell, and also starred in the Korean war film War Hunt in 1962. He left Hollywood for Italy, believing European films were more mature and artistic. Ironically, he plays an Italian in this film, while Letitia Roman plays an American born to Italian immigrants.
Funny.
Because they spoke both English and Italian, they spoke English in their scenes together on set, with other actors speaking Italian, as is normal for these sort of productions. And then they both provided their own voices in both the Italian and English dubs.
Okay.
So whichever version you're watching, you're going to hear their real voices, but their scenes were shot in English, so like the lip movements match the English. Another actress who also provided her voice in both versions of the film was Valentina Cortese, who was born on New Year's Day in Milan in 1923 to Olga Cortese and the nobleman Napoleone Rossi de Quenzo. She was raised by her mother, as the Quenzo was not around for her childhood. And later she was raised by her maternal grandparents in Turin. And in 1940, at age 17, she began an affair with 48-year-old conductor Victor de Sabata and came with him to Rome, where he lived with his wife and children.
Ay, ay, ay.
There, she enrolled in the National Academy for Dramatic Arts and began acting in 1941. And by 1948, she was independent enough to end her relationship with Sabata. She began appearing in international films, and she married her American co-star Richard Basehart, with whom she had appeared in 1951's The House on Telegraph Hill by Robert Wise. In 1960, they divorced, returning to their respective countries and leaving their son Jackie in Valentina's care. She continued acting until 1993 and passed away in 2019 at age 96.
Wow, that's a long career.
Yeah. So this film began shooting in May of 1962 in Rome. Bava thought that the story was very silly, and he decided to focus on the technical side of directing, shooting the film himself. He shot the film in black and white, as was custom for horror and thriller films in Italy at this time, but this would be the last time he would do so.
Mm-hmm.
Saxon and Bava did not get along on set. Saxon would practice judo on the beach between shoots, and Bava saw this as showing off.
Little bit.
Saxon felt that Roman had been instructed by Bava to seduce him into appearing in this film, and believed that Bava later was growing jealous of the attention that Roman was paying to Saxon on set, and that's why he was like upset about the judo and the showing off and stuff. So Saxon thought that Bava wanted Roman for himself, despite also believing that Bava had ordered Roman to seduce him to get him there.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows the truth of these things? Filming wrapped in July, and the overall cost for the movie was 190 million lira, which is about $50,000 to $60,000, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's about like average what he has spent on his stuff, right?
I think so. Editing for this film was done by Mario Serendrei, who had also worked on La Maschera del Demonio. Music by Roberto Nicolosi, who had also done the music for that film. And this movie has a theme song.
Oh, wonderful.
Written and performed for it by the incredibly popular Italian music star Adriano Celentano, who is perhaps best known today in the West for his 1970s nonsense song, Prisen Kolinensinen Chuzol.
Oh, I love this song. I love this song so much because he was so like, all these like Italians like listening to English songs. So then he made a song that sounded like it's in English to non-English speakers, but it's just gibberish.
Yes.
Yeah, but it is a bop.
Yes.
It is a bop.
It's still a very good song.
Something that came up when I was looking up the key characteristics of giallo is strong soundtracks. The only other giallo film I really know is Suspiria.
Right.
Which, like, has a very strong soundtrack, but I didn't know if that was, general enough to say across the genre. But maybe that there's something to it if this movie has a theme song.
Yeah, and Suspiria is kind of a transitional film from traditional giallo to like supernatural horror.
Yes, yeah, that's true. There is like debate about whether Suspiria should be considered giallo because it's witches.
Yeah.
But anyways, like I said, that's my only real like touchstone that I've seen.
I know that Nicolosi's score for this film is like jazzy.
Oh, okay. I mean, that fits with the time.
For sure. So La Ragazza Che Sapeva Troppo was released in Italy on February 10th, 1963.
Just in time for Valentine's Day.
Right. And it made only 80 million lira.
Ooh.
Which is half of what it cost.
Yeah.
Making it a huge flop. In fact, it is the greatest failure of Mario Bava's career.
So only up from here. Oh, no.
The film was released, retitled to The Evil Eye, dubbed in English, on a double bill with Bava's Black Sabbath on May 6th, 1964 in the United States. So he makes Black Sabbath after this, and then they get released together. This American version was re-edited from the Italian, so you can't just like switch the audio track on the Blu-ray. You have to have two different discs, basically. This re-edited version has many scenes deleted from the Italian version, including an entire subplot about marijuana that is just gone now.
That's too risque in the US.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It also has additional comedic scenes added. These are like scenes that Bava shot, but it's like the Italian version is more thriller and the American version is more comedy in terms of like the focus. A lot of the additional scenes like have more John Saxon in them. Like Roman is the star of the Italian version and Saxon's kind of the star of the American version.
Again, kind of makes sense.
And also the American version had its score replaced with a new one by Les Baxter, kind of the standard AIP composer.
Yeah.
The two versions also have different endings, which I'll talk about after we watch the movie.
Okay.
And initially, The Evil Eye was the version like more common in the US. It's the version that came out in theaters in the US, went to TV in the US, was on VHS in the US, until like the DVD era, which then made the Italian Girl Who Knew Too Much kind of the standard. But nowadays, the latest Blu-ray releases from Arrow in the UK and Kino Lorber in the US include both versions.
Nice. Which one will we be watching?
We're going to be watching La Ragazza Che Sapeva Troppo because it's like Bava's cut of the movie.
Yeah.
Not like re-edited by AIP, even though there is probably value in seeing both because they have different scenes. And in the American cut, you're hearing John Saxon and Letitia Roman as they were on set. But that's kind of the thing with all these like Italian movies is you have to kind of make a choice about which version you want to hear. In some cases, there is like an intended version, like Suspiria, despite being shot in Italy, is meant to be seen in English by its director. But yeah.
So it's kind of like dealer's choice of like which way you want to go.
A little bit. But yeah, we're going to be watching the Italian version because it's Bava's version of the movie. So American critics at the time called The Evil Eye silly but enjoyable. A lot of critics called out the preposterous story but praised Bava's camera work. One reviewer even said that Bava lacked Ricardo Freda's ability to make the most out of cliches and seemed unhappy with the overcomplicated plot. Like the reviewer just sort of got that from watching the movie, that the director seemed unhappy with the overcomplicated plot. As it turns out, that was totally true. And Bava would later say that the film was too preposterous. Perhaps it would have worked with James Stewart and Kim Novak.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about like Bava's connection to Hitchcock or like praise of Hitchcock because of the way that color gets used throughout giallo, presumably after this film.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Anyways, how are we watching this?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, this is available on Blu-ray. And if you want to stream the movie, it is available on Tubi and Shudder, but it seems to be The Evil Eye that's available on Tubi and Shudder. So at the moment, if you want to watch the Italian version, Girl Who Knew Too Much, I think you have to look for the Blu-ray at this point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, folks, hopefully you can find a copy, or you're fine with streaming The Evil Eye. You're going to hear a brief musical interlude, and when we come back, we will discuss The Girl Who Knew Too Much from 1963, directed by Mario Bava.
See you on the other side, everybody.
Hello and welcome back to Scream Scene. We just finished watching The Girl Who Knew Too Much from 1963, directed by Mario Bava. Ben, first thoughts?
I thought this was fun. You can definitely see the Hitchcock influence.
Yeah.
Along with like the influence of Hitchcock imitators like Charade and Mirage in kind of the thing of like two regular people, a man and a woman, caught up in like some bizarre conspiratorial events.
Yeah. Yeah, I also really enjoyed this. They have the benefit of being able to shoot on location in Rome, and boy, oh boy, does that like really heighten like the experience, I think. Like, yeah. I really enjoyed this movie. So let's just dive into the plot. It's, as with many mystery type of movies, there's a lot of twists and turns. So Ben, feel free to jump in if you think that I might have like overly glossed over something.
Okay.
So we follow Nora Davis. She is an American tourist heading to Rome, and she has a very eventful 24 hours when she lands. So first off, she's looking for her cigarettes on the plane, and the guy sitting next to her offers her some of his cigarettes, says, you know what, you can just take the whole package. And then when they are in the terminal, he is arrested for smuggling in weed with these weed-laced cigarettes that she now has a package of. Nora gets to her ailing aunt's house. She's come all this way to really visit her Aunt Ethel. When she arrives, she meets her aunt's doctor, Dr. Marcello Bassi, who says, you know, be careful, your aunt could die at any moment, any great fright. Unfortunately, it's a big thunderstorm, and her aunt dies. Nora gets really freaked out, discovering her aunt, and she ends up trying to get a hold of the hospital. She runs out, trying to run over to the hospital to get Dr. Bassi, but because it's the middle of the night, she gets mugged and gets knocked out. Then, as she kind of wakes up in a daze, she happens to see a murder happen in front of her. She sees a woman leave this house that's like in this Piazza Spagna. So like this big plaza, we'll say, this plaza called the Spanish Plaza. Anyways, there's like a house that's in the corner, and this woman stumbles out of it. She has a knife in her back, and this woman is followed by a man with a goatee who takes out the knife and brings the body back inside. Then Nora passes out again. She's found the next morning, first by someone who tries to use alcohol to wake her up, but then a policeman comes by, and so that man kind of freaks out and runs off. So now everyone thinks that she was drunk on the streets. But luckily the cop picks her up, they take her to a hospital, and because of that alcohol, people believe that she hallucinated what was going on. You know, it was either a drunken stupor or, shock from being mugged, from your aunt dying, all of this. And this is all mainly because there's no evidence of a murder. There's no dead body, there's no blood, no one's reported anything, no one else saw anything. She's the only witness. After her aunt's funeral, Nora happens to meet a woman who says she was a friend of her aunt, and this woman's name is Laura Craven Tirani, who invites Nora to basically house sit at their place while Laura goes to visit her husband in Switzerland. Turns out it's the same house that she saw the murder happen right outside of. So Nora's like, yeah, sure, I'll house sit, and then try to get to the bottom of what exactly happened with this murder that no one believes.
I think it's also pretty clear that like Laura is lying to her about being a friend of Ethel's.
Yes.
Because she just kind of like overhears Nora talking about both her aunt dying and seeing this murder in front of Laura's house. And after overhearing it, then goes over to her and invites her on this pretext.
Now we, as the audience, happen to see that the husband's photo matches the man with the goatee that we saw in like the murder scene. But Nora doesn't get to see this photo. So as Nora stays here, she begins to investigate the murder. She does receive some mysterious, threatening phone calls, and she ends up finding paper clippings of the alphabet murders from about 10 years prior. Now, these alphabet murders were basically like 3 different women were killed in that same manner of a knife in the back. And they're called the alphabet murders because each woman's last name begins with first A, then B, then C. The last one being Emily Craven, Laura's sister. And part of the threatening phone calls that Nora is getting is that her last name is Davis, and D is, of course, next. As she investigates, with Marcello's help, of course, they begin to fall in love, and they end up trying to look up the reporter who first covered the alphabet murders, whose last name is Landini, and he explains how Emily Craven's brother-in-law, so the man with the goatee, is a psychiatrist, and he suggested that, it must be like this homeless man who's been hanging around who always seems a little off. So Landini helped put that homeless man away, but as the years went on, he increasingly began to believe that that man was actually innocent. Besides, this guy who was homeless, he died about a year ago. They learned that this guy's daughter mysteriously came into some money right around that same time. And all of this is kind of adding up to like a very clearly some kind of conspiracy going on, a very thick mystery. So Nora goes to meet with Landini, who thinks he's found like the missing piece to this puzzle. But when she goes into his apartment, she finds him dead with an apparent suicide note where he confesses that he was the alphabet killer. Now, this is all a lot for Nora. This whole trip to Rome, it's supposed to be fun, romantic. It's just been horrible for her. So she's like, you know what? I need to get out of here. Like, this is too much. And so Laura returns home from Switzerland to kind of like start to look after the house before Nora leaves. And Laura's husband is coming later that night. So before she starts to pack up all of her things, Nora starts to look through some recent newspapers, and she sees the face of the woman she saw murdered in one of the columns. So she goes to the police and identifies the body. It turns out that this was the daughter of that innocent man who had come into money. While at the police station, they say, we don't really have any leads on what happened to this woman, but when she died, she was clutching this strange-looking button. Nora takes that button and heads back to the house. She's just compelled to try to solve this mystery. And as part of it, she basically breaks into the husband's office and discovers that he's been attacked with a knife in his back. Dun, dun, dun. Laura turns out to be the murderer. Now, we get her side of the story. She kind of explains everything that's going on in a very tense way. It's clear that she's insane and she has to kill to fit with these alphabet murders, which also means that she is going to kill Nora next.
It's like interesting because there's a little bit of ambiguity in my mind about her exact motivations because she is clearly insane. Mm-hmm. I think Valentina Cortese does a really great job playing this part, but I think there's 2 ways you can kind of read what was going on. One is that like she was just purely crazy and following the alphabet. But there's also this whole thing about how Laura's sister Emily thought Laura was nuts and was going to get her like disinherited from their father's money, which gives her a reason to kill her sister that isn't just you're someone I know whose name starts with C, which then is like, so did you kill A and B in order to create like an MO for killing C that wouldn't suggest it as like a more personal motivation, right?
Yeah.
And that those sorts of motives like continue in these most recent crimes where it's like, oh, we got to kill the daughter because she's going to talk. And
blackmail.
Yeah. And like Nora has to die because she
found out too much.
Right. She knows too much.
Oh, yeah. She knew too much.
Exactly.
So as Laura is about to shoot Nora, her husband, who's not quite dead yet, shoots Laura first. So the next day, Nora's trying to forget everything. Marcello's trying to like take her throughout Rome to help her forget. And then she starts to wonder like, oh yeah, those weed cigarettes. Was all of this a dream because I had a cigarette laced with marijuana before all of this happened? And then she kind of like shakes it off, throws the pack away, and Marcello and Nora plan to get married. The end. So it's like the world's longest anti-marijuana advertisement.
Right.
Now, Ben, you had mentioned at the beginning that there were different endings.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, okay. So it's kind of interesting. Mm-hmm. The English version of the movie, The Evil Eye, is in some ways the same movie and in some ways very different.
Okay.
And what's clear when you look at the English version is that the movie was shot in English, not just, I think in the intro I said it was Letitia Roman and John Saxon's scenes, but no, the whole movie was clearly shot in English because when you watch the English version, all the lips match. Mm-hmm. It's also clear that everything, all the extra stuff that you see in the English version that isn't in the Italian version was clearly shot on the Italian shoot by Bava. And I also said in the intro, I think I said that like the English version cut scenes from the Italian version. That's actually inaccurate. I misspoke. The English version features scenes cut from the Italian version. The English version is longer.
Oh, okay.
But what's really interesting is if you compare the two, it's like a really interesting exercise in how editing can affect tone. Mm-hmm. I mentioned in the context setting that like there were a ton of writers and all these different writers threw in all these different ideas. The Italian version is edited to keep the tone consistent with a thriller or horror kind of movie. The English version has a lot of comedy to lessen the impact of the like horror thriller elements. So it has a lot of comic relief, which clearly was shot by Bava. So Bava made the choice to like excise all that stuff and then AIP put it back in. Some of the interesting differences that I'll just quickly go over are that in the Italian version, the movie has a narrator who's like an omniscient male narrator who speaks like he's narrating a giallo novel.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that aspect, especially because it starts off with Nora being really into these giallo pulp books and reading them on the plane as well.
Yeah, the English version is narrated by Nora.
Oh, okay.
And has a lot of narration that's very like, let's connect the dots between these plot points that maybe are a little unclear. Also, in Italian, this is just a thing from listening to you say the plot synopsis, but like Laura and Nora, that's very confusing. But in Italian, it's Nora and Laura. So the names do sound different. The English version has all these extra comedic scenes. Mm-hmm. So in between her leaving the airport and getting to Ethel's apartment, there's like a whole sequence of her like failing to find a cab that's sort of like Batman trying to get rid of a bomb. She's very klutzy in the English version and like bumps her head on stuff all the time. There's comedic gags that don't make sense. That are just there for comedy. Like she's staying in her room at Ethel's house and there's a painting on the wall whose eyes keep following her around, but it's not like, oh, someone's watching her and this will tie into the thing later because nothing's happened yet. Ethel hasn't died. The gag is that the painting's kind of a pervert and is like watching her change and she has to like hang a towel in front of it. Like it's just, it doesn't make any logical sense. It's just like a comedic thing. So there's a lot of little differences like that. Her name is Drowson, not Davis, in the English version, which is interesting because, again, it's clear they shot it in English. That's what the lip flaps like match. So her name was written to be Drowson, and then they changed it to Davis in Italian, probably to like be easier to say in Italian, honestly. So there's a lot of weird little things like that. There's a minor character in the movie of this professor associate of Marcello's who at one point suggests that the murder that Nora saw is not a new murder, but that she somehow psychically saw the earlier murder of Emily in front of the house 10 years ago, because that's the only murder anyone knows of having taken place there, that she somehow got like psychic impressions of it through like memory in the area or something. And in the English version, he's in more scenes and he like takes her somewhere where he believes he feels like psychic impressions. And he's like, yes, when I stand here, I can imagine myself wearing a toga. And she eventually realizes that the only reason this guy is humoring her is because he kind of wants to like get her, with her.
Sure.
And then she abandons him. Anyways, all of this sort of adds up to like a lot of the differences being editing. There's a lot of like cuts between scenes where you get maybe extra stuff in the English or a little extra stuff in the Italian. Most of the extra stuff's in the English. The Italian's a lot tighter. It has like a little bit more explicit shots of the violence or something, but really there's more in the English, which might make you think like, is the English one the definitive one to watch then? But the English movie's like a weird comedy, and the Italian version that Bava edited is like fully like a horror thriller kind of story.
Yeah, I think the key here is the one that Bava edited,
Exactly.
because he also directed. So this is what he is choosing for the movie to be.
Yes, exactly. So it's clear that like the movie could have gone in a few different directions based on what they shot. And then you have this interesting compare contrast that you can do between the two versions. But it is nice in the English version because you get to hear the three like main characters giving their like on-set, I guess, performances. Since those three characters do their voice in both versions. Anyways, the US ending is kind of wild. So the US version cuts out all the stuff about weed. It still has
which is weird to me because it like I said, this is an anti-marijuana movie.
Right. It's also weird for another detail that I'll mention right now.
Okay.
But so they keep the guy on the plane giving her the cigarettes, and they keep him getting arrested, although they portray the guys arresting him very comedically because of the music choices. That's the other thing that makes the English version a comedy, is like Les Baxter scores it like a comedy. So he gets arrested. There's nothing about him smuggling cocaine or weed. It's just he's smuggling cigarettes, like just regular old cigarettes. And then she's like worried because she has these smuggled cigarettes on her. Later, in between arriving at Ethel's and Ethel dying, there's a long scene that isn't in the Italian version where she's like sitting up in bed reading one of her giallo novels, and she finds that like her cigarettes are empty, crushes the pack, throws it away, takes out the cigarettes she got from the guy at the plane, and just absentmindedly starts smoking one, which when they shot it in Italian, Bava would know those are the weed cigarettes. And then what happens immediately after that is the painting that looks at her like all pervy, that has no explanation, and then her aunt dying, and then all the other events, which sort of makes the scene at the end where she goes, was this all like a weird marijuana hallucination?
A little bit more plausible.
Right. Except the scene where she smokes that cigarette isn't in the Italian version. And the scene at the end where she says maybe it was all a marijuana hallucination isn't in the American version. The American version has a totally different ending scene, completely different. Tarani, Laura's husband, shoots her. And it's this really cool thing where he shoots her through a door because he's dying with the knife in his back in the room beyond. And she slumps down and we see like light streaming through the two bullet holes. And it's really cool looking. In the American version, it then cross-dissolves to like a guy looking through binoculars from the two holes in the door. And this guy looking through binoculars is heading down like a gondola from the top of like a hill, like a ski slope kind of thing. And we see Nora and Marcello coming up the gondola. And the guy who had the binoculars, who was looking at someone through them, has like a gun. And we're like, oh no, like, what's this? What's going to happen now? And Marcello and Nora are having a conversation where Marcello's like, absolutely, I will marry you on one condition, Nora, which is that you don't drag me into any more murder stuff ever again, don't mention murder. Like, don't even talk about murder. Like, let's just pretend murders don't even exist. No more murder novels, nothing. And she's like, okay. And then the guy going down the gondola, we see this guy shoot someone, but it's not at Nora and Marcello. It's at this woman making out with a guy in a different gondola. And he's like, that serves you right for cheating on me or whatever. And he's like shot his cheating wife. And Marcello reacts and he's like, oh, like when she gets to the top, like, I'm a doctor, I'll be right there, kind of thing. And Nora's just like placidly looking off into space. And Marcello's like, what, didn't you see that? And she's like, no, I didn't. Because she just agreed to like never mention murders to him ever again. And then it's like, ha ha ha. And then the movie ends.
Okay. That's weird.
Yes.
That's a very strange ending, I think.
It is very strange. And it's trying to play like a murder off for comedy. And it's like very weird.
Yeah.
So that's the US ending, which then doesn't have the return of the cigarette plot line because it's not actually in this version to return.
I much prefer the Italian ending. I think the entire Italian movie is really good. It does still have comedic elements, but I think it does a really good job of balancing comedic elements almost as like comedic stings instead of comedic scenes. Mm-hmm. So to me, it still feels like a horror thriller.
First and foremost, talking about this movie, this is a gorgeous movie.
Absolutely.
Beautiful, moody, black and white cinematography that is accomplished with a kind of conscious stylishness. Like, you can tell that Bava's trying to show off a little and find cool ways of shooting things. Just like wonderful, fantastic shots and lighting and composition that like consistently elevate the rest of the movie just through like little weird choices.
Yeah, and just things where like the amount of work to set up one particular shot, and that's the only shot we get in that particular setup. So they're taking the time and effort and money to make it so stylish.
Yeah, each shot is a shot, right? Rather than just like, this whole scene is lit this same way, regardless of what's going on, right?
Yeah.
A couple things that really stand out to me is like some of the beautiful night shooting in Rome. He uses like edge lighting very effectively. He uses silhouettes very effectively. There's a shot where Nora is holding a glass of water that she's put some medicine for Ethel in as Ethel's like having her fatal attack. And she like turns and we see Ethel has died. And we're like looking past her hand holding the glass. And there's light coming through the glass from somewhere in a really beautiful way to like highlight it so that her hand is silhouetted, but there's light going through the glass. And then she drops the glass, right? Like, really beautiful shots. The other thing I think of is like there's a scene where she goes to meet up with who we later learn is Landini, or someone pretending to be Landini. And she's going through these like creepy hallways that all have these like swinging bare light bulbs. Just like little things that like add to this
weirdness.
Right.
This like someone's here feeling.
Mm-hmm. There's like very odd edits that are very stylish.
Yeah, I wrote down clever editing, and that was before hearing about this American version versus Italian version editing choices. Mm-hmm. So even just within his own movie, he's doing some very clever, interesting editing.
Landini tells a whole story about how he got involved as a reporter reporting on the murders back in the day. And when he finishes his story, there's a wipe, like a George Lucas Kurosawa wipe, except the wipe is not a line. It's like a cloud of smoke as he's exhaling from a cigarette that he's smoking in the next shot, which was super cool.
Yeah. It was like Mr. Bava, really showing off in every aspect.
There's a really weird moment, but there's a stylish edit in it where, so Bava, because this is a thriller, a few different times he plays the like Bart, do you want to see my new mask and chainsaw kind of Simpsons gag where something seems threatening and then it's fine. And so there's this moment where like Nora and Marcello are on the beach, really just as an excuse to put them in swimsuits and show that they look hot. And they're like, oh man, we lucked out today, like trying to find this Landini guy. And then Marcello gets like this threatening look on his face as he's looking at her. And he's like, Nora, like, haven't you figured it out by now? Like, I can't hold back any longer. Like, and it's meant to make you think like, oh, is Marcello the murderer who's been stalking her this whole while? And she gets really freaked out because obviously she would. It's been a rough time for her in Rome. And then he lunges forward and kisses her because it's supposed to be like, oh, like I've been holding back from how much I love you this whole time. Couldn't you figure that out? And then it immediately like match cuts to them kissing in like a later scene where now it's implied that like, I don't know, they probably had sex in between or whatever and now have like a romantic relationship, which is like a wildly disorienting cut, but like it's neat.
Yeah. I think the music and the score are really great. They even use the theme song in the movie itself, which is fun.
Yeah, the rock theme song over the credits, yeah.
And I think like hearing what you had to say about the American version and how Les Baxter uses the music to emphasize the comedic elements, it's the music and the score that really help emphasize the very scary moments and tense moments in this movie.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's just like a lot of impressive stylistic flourishes that are sort of happening throughout.
I think everyone's acting is all really, really good. It was a little distracting how much that the reporter looks like Shane Madej from from Watcher Entertainment.
Sure.
Because when he showed up, I was like, the fuck? It's uncanny. It's uncanny. But yeah, I think everyone's acting is really good. And I really enjoyed Letitia Ramon's, like, she's curious and intent on finding out what's going on, but then also gets like really overwhelmed and really scared. And she has like this doe-eyed look at some points. And you can tell, especially when she's facing off against Laura, that like she's like has sweat coming down her face. Like she's scared. Yeah. So I think she did a fantastic job.
Yeah. And I think I already mentioned that I think the actress who plays Laura did a really good job of being crazy in the final scene. The performances are good. I think if there's one reason to recommend the English version, it would be for the performances, because you're getting to hear them not dubbed, right? And so it's like the performance is more natural to what's happening on set.
But wouldn't it all have been ADR'd? Because that's like the trend in Italian.
Yeah, absolutely it would have been. But it's just like, because I know it's the same people doing it in English and Italian, I think there's like something to be seen about the fact that their lips match what they're saying means there's like less of an artifice there. So I think if there's something to be recommended about seeing in English, it's seeing sort of the performances with them saying the words they were saying on set, right?
Okay. I didn't have that problem because I often don't look at people's mouths when they're talking. It's hard enough to make eye contact, Ben.
So I do think on the subject of the performances, I think John Saxon's character, Marcello, is largely pointless. He's like the male equivalent of a sexy lamp in this movie. He's kind of here because you expect there to be a male lead. Like he's practically vestigial, really.
But it's nice that it's a guy that's in that role, you know?
Yeah, he's her eye candy love interest.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
So he came on screen and you know, Ben, of course, gave his like biography up to this point. But he comes on screen and I'm like, why does he look so familiar? And Ben's like, oh, he was in Enter the Dragon. And I was like, oh, yes. Okay. So that's like my touchstone for him. And him practicing judo on the beach makes so much more sense now. Because, yeah, otherwise it did just seem kind of like, okay, bud.
Yeah.
Like, okay, yeah, practice your karate. Yeah, I think like he did a fine job in this role. Like he doesn't have much to do. And one thing that like, I don't recall seeing if this was a key characteristic of giallo, but it makes sense for it to be that it is very frequently led by women, because it just makes sense to threaten your main girl.
Yeah.
Kind of leads to that like final girl trope that is very common in slashers.
Yes.
So it's nice to see like, hey, a female lead.
It's sort of horror finally figuring out something that we've been kind of yelling about for a long time, right?
Yeah.
Which is like, okay, so there's some inherent sexism in the idea that like, oh, it's more effective to threaten a woman because women are the weaker sex or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Once we get past that hurdle and let's say we accept that premise, then like if you're threatening the female character, what we've been saying for a long time is make the female character the main character then, so that the audience is seeing the movie through her eyes. Because for so long, it's like, no. A man has to be the main character. So we have to have this kind of like useless guy off to the side who we're seeing the movie through. And he's not really threatened by the villain. It's the girl. So he has to go save her. But then that like undercuts the feeling of horror. Because it's like, well, you had this beefy boy who was going to rescue you the whole time kind of thing, right? It's like this interesting... It's like a very mercenary kind of writing effectiveness, pragmatism mixed with sexism that gives us main female characters in horror movies that weirdly eventually leads to a kind of like feminist read on the genre where it's like, well, what's the genre you go to for strong female protagonists? Oh, it's horror,
Yeah.
It's an interesting snowball effect. Speaking of giallo tropes, I will say that overall, this is not what I was expecting from the first giallo movie. It lacked a lot of what I feel like are the hallmarks, like the elaborate kills and even like the mystery killer, because the way the movie is structured. So I didn't find the story as preposterous or silly as its reputation sort of had me believe.
Yeah, I agree. And even like the way that it has these twists and turns, that's all really in line with that literary mystery, like it's very like what you would expect for something like that.
Yeah, I think maybe if we saw the English version, we'd be more like, what the fuck? Just because of the tone thing. But also the only thing that really lacks logic is like, why did Laura invite Nora to stay at her house for several weeks? And it's like, well, because she knew Nora knew something about the murder. And it's like, well, then why didn't she just kill her right away? Why did she let her be in the house for so long and elaborate this whole elaborate thing? And like, why does she choose this moment to do these things and whatever? And ultimately, even if those don't make sense, like you can kind of hand wave them away with like, well, she's nuts, right?
Yeah.
But, I think maybe there's something to be said for like, I didn't find this preposterous, but we are living in the era of like video game and comic book movies. So maybe our bar for what's a preposterous story is different than a critic in 1963.
Yeah. They didn't have like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Right.
So.
Exactly. The movie does rely a lot on coincidence, but it ultimately hangs together. The thing that surprised me and that didn't feel very giallo-like to me at first was it seemed very clear who the murderer was. Like,
yeah, we get to see the man with the goatee.
Exactly. It's a mystery to the characters, but we see his picture in the house right away, so we know who it is, which means that we have this like dramatic irony thing where we're waiting for like the net to close in around Nora, but then it turns out it was a mystery murder because it wasn't that guy, it was Laura. And I feel like in hindsight, I should have been thinking, well, it can't be that guy because we saw his face right away, right? But I was expecting like total mystery, black gloves, all of that. So like it didn't have a lot of the characteristics I was expecting from a giallo movie, but, and you've already pointed this out, and I totally agree, what it does do is harken back often and explicitly to the genre's literary origin. Like she reads all these books and the narrator is constantly being like, oh, she got the idea to do this from this book or that book.
Yeah. So it makes me think of that very first giallo movie that's called Giallo. Like it's almost like that 1933 movie and then this movie 30 years later are making explicit the step from literary to the screen. And from here, it can go on to be its own specifically film genre.
For sure. I was surprised that the marijuana thing never came back as anything other than a final little joke, because the way it was set up at the start of the movie, I was like, oh, it's Chekhov's marijuana cigarettes. Like, I kept expecting someone to accidentally smoke them.
Yeah, you thought Ethel was going to accidentally smoke one and that would be what killed her.
Right. And she's getting followed by this mystery guy through the whole movie, who we eventually realize is Landini. But at first I was like, is she going to get offed by like the Roman mafia because like they think she knows something about the guy who got arrested at the start of the movie? Like, is that what she knows too much about? Like,
yeah,
I was expecting, like, especially because I knew the story had this reputation for being a little over the top, ridiculous, or far-fetched. I was like, oh, is there going to be like multiple things going on? Like, there's the murder, but there's also the mafia, but there's also this and that. Mm-hmm. So I was a little surprised it didn't really come back other than as a joke at the end. But I do have to say that the idea of one joint making her potentially hallucinate several days worth of events is hilarious.
Yeah.
But not as hilarious as the idea that she could unknowingly smoke a marijuana cigarette on the plane.
Yeah. No, you know right away.
Yeah, it doesn't.
I mean, they do say it's laced, so it's not,
But like, marijuana smells different than tobacco. Yeah. It tastes different than tobacco. You feel different than with tobacco. Like, the idea that
she's like, oh, maybe it's just the altitude.
Yeah. But like, the idea that like all the other people on the plane wouldn't be like, what the fuck is that smell? That's not cigarette smoke. That's something else. Like, that's a little like, the movie has strong Mario Bava has never smoked weed vibes to it, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, like we see her smoking throughout the entire movie. Mm-hmm. So I think if they had made a bit more explicit of like she's smoking weed cigarettes. Mm-hmm. I keep saying weed cigarettes instead of joints because, like I said, they're cigarettes laced with weed. It's not pure.
That's also what they keep calling them in the movie.
Yeah. So like I think like if they had made that a little bit stronger, but like she's not the only one experiencing this shit,
right?
So like I think then, and I think like if it had been the case of like, was it all a dream? Then I'd be like, fuck this movie. But I very much enjoyed this movie.
Also, like the was it all a weed hallucination joke ending feels more in line with the jokey tone of the American version, but the American version doesn't have that. Like it's weird. It's a little weird. So as we're discussing this and we're discussing the gialloness of it all, it does bring me to a question. Mm-hmm. So obviously we know that giallo sort of is its own subgenre because it becomes its own subgenre. But for the purpose of ranking, do we think this is more thriller or horror?
Yeah, I did struggle with this. Ultimately, I kind of came on the side of we should rank it for a few different reasons. One, it does show quite a lot of violence and danger to our main lead. We do see her get threatened, and I think it has like the hallmarks of what become the horror elements of giallo, but also the fact that this is seen as one of the first giallo movies means that it should be ranked because it's one of those tree offshoots. Right?
Yeah.
In the same way that we ranked Godzilla, because yes, it's horror, but we didn't rank Godzilla Raids Again, you know?
I'm inclined to agree with you for that reason. I do think that in terms of narrative structure, this is a lot closer to thriller, with like the investigation element and the clues and this kind of like on the edge of your seat feeling. Interestingly, I think narratively it's thriller, but Bava shoots it like horror.
Yeah, that's the other thing too.
Yeah, like this is shot like it's a horror movie. I think the point in horror's favor that you already brought up is that it's Nora who's directly under threat. She has to solve the mystery or else she is next. And that's a little bit more horror slasher vibes than a typical thriller, I feel like. Overall, the movie's plot and tone also tends to put it in the category of something like Le Diabolique, which is sort of also straddling that thriller horror line, but we included it because it like so clearly influenced later horror movies. But I think the emotional intent of the movie, the structure, the Hitchcockian rhythm of it sort of leans me towards like it mostly being thriller.
Yeah, because that's the thing. Like, if you want to point to some Hitchcock films, like obviously The Man Who Knew Too Much, I can see Vertigo fitting into here.
North by Northwest, not on the same scale, but in the like ordinary person gets caught
swept up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And all of those are thrillers.
Yeah. Psycho is about something horrific that happens and then like an attempt to put some sort of explanation to it, right? But I do agree with you about ranking it. I think we should rank it. I think it's enough horror on its own to be ranked, and I also think that its influence means that it should be considered as well. So I'm in agreement, but I wanted to bring up
I think it's worthwhile.
Question. Yeah,
absolutely. Giallo genre. Sorry. It's fun because it's an Italian word, then a French word.
Okay, so I've got like a pretty small range, and it's fairly high.
I have 2 small ranges.
Oh, weird. Okay, this is new.
So let me call out some waypoints for us first.
Sure.
The highest ranked Bava movies, we have Black Sunday at 28, Kaltiki at 63, and E Vampiri at 117.
Okay.
One of your reviews also mentioned like Freda, and Bava worked with Freda. Kaltiki is a joint production with them. So I thought it also worth mentioning that Freda's top ranked movie is The Horrible Dr. Hitchcock at 25. All of which is to say, at first I was like, you know what? I really enjoyed this movie. I think it's maybe not as like within the range of, say, Black Sunday or Horrible Dr. Hitchcock, but around Kaltiki kind of did feel like it made sense. A little ways above Kaltiki is Mill of the Stone Women at 56, also an Italian movie, and also a bit of like a mystery trying to solve things with a bit of a conspiracy going on. So I felt like this range between like 56 to 63 felt right. And then I started going, but was this movie more style over substance? Which I do sometimes accidentally fall into liking style more than substance.
Sure.
No hate to Gothic, but Gothic has a lot of style and sometimes not a lot of substance. And that's just a trend for me.
I think horror tends to be a genre that encourages style, especially because it has plots that get iterated on so many times. It's like, how many times can you do a vampire movie or a werewolf movie? A lot of times what you do to make the movie stand out is more about style.
Yeah. So then as I started like probably overthinking about style over substance, I started looking lower. And I was like, okay, well, E Vampiri is at 117. That movie is stylish. You know, we have a female vampire. It's kind of cool. But we also still have a scientist looking for the secret of youth. And I think The Girl Who Knew Too Much is a bit above that. Also in the, female lead vibe, we have Dementia at 96. And at 93 is The Maze with Frog Boy. And the way of trying to solve this mystery and this conspiracy around this area, like this centralized like castle in the case of The Maze, or this centralized like plaza in the case of The Girl Who Knew Too Much. So I started kind of considering 93 to 117. So that's why I have 2 ranges. You could make an argument for either. So I'd love to hear where you were looking.
So I also was looking at like, what are the higher movies? I was also looking at like Horrible Dr. Hitchcock at 25 or Black Sunday at 28. The problem is that I stayed in that area.
Okay.
So I didn't drop down like you did. So the comp in my head was Taste of Fear. Because I was thinking about like other like thriller mystery movies that have like twists and turns and a threatened female lead that ultimately feel like horror. And so that got me to Taste of Fear. And I wasn't sure if this was better or worse than Taste of Fear, because on a stylistic note, I really liked this. But I think Taste of Fear did a better job of being scary. And this movie didn't quite have Taste of Fear's like, wait, what the fuck is happening kind of reaction to the twists at the end. So I made Taste of Fear my ceiling. The Horrible Secret of Dr. Hitchcock's at 25. Mask of the Demons at 28, aka Black Sunday. I looked down. Le Diabolique is at 34. So I was like, okay, this could be better or worse than that. I think this is maybe better than I Married a Monster from Outer Space. But then I saw that Dracula was right below that. And I was like, I don't know if this is better than Dracula, though. Right below Dracula is Night of the Demon and then House on Haunted Hill. And I think that, so Macabre came from La Diabolique. And then all the other Castle movies came from Macabre, right? And so I'm looking at House on Haunted Hill. I'm looking at Macabre. And I'm like, I think The Girl Who Knew Too Much is a better take on Le Diabolique than Macabre is. I think that it's a better movie. So I ended up making my floor 39, Night of the Demon. So my range was 22 to 39. So we've got really no overlap because you were like, oh, no, we got to be lower. And then you were like, wait, what if we were lower still?
Yeah, like I hear what you're saying around like Le Diabolique and like even House on Haunted Hill. It's very much like gothic and goofy,
Yeah, there's
spoopy.
Yes.
And I think that this movie handles the comedy, like I said, comedic stings instead of comedic scenes.
Yeah, it's sort of funny that you like how it handles the comedy elements is very different depending on which version you end up seeing. The reason why I think the different versions are so interesting to me is that unlike, say, a movie like Godzilla King of the Monsters, the extra stuff in the American version was shot by the original director on set with everything else, right? So it's not like, oh, AIP came in and added some extra goofiness.
Yeah.
It's no, this is extra goofiness that was shot that Bava chose to cut out, right? That then was kept in otherwise.
Yeah,
so,
I'm really curious, like, did he cut it, like, did he film it because AIP requested something like that and he knew what he wanted to do, but was like meeting like demands within his contract? I'm really curious.
The story that I heard about how the movie was written, at least, like, makes me think that it was more that like there were too many cooks in the kitchen and the script had just like a ton of different tones because nobody was going for the same thing, and Bava just shot all of it and then was making choices in the editing room.
Sure.
What was your ceiling? Your highest ceiling?
My highest ceiling. Honestly, I was looking at like around 53 with The Return of the Vampire. That's Dracula during the Blitz, to remind you, because there's Return of the Vampire directed by Landers, and then The Vampire Returns by Landrez. So I get them confused a lot. So yeah, that was around 53. Part of why I was looking at that is because Fiend Without a Face is a little bit above Lake of the Dead, which has like such a control over its tone, is up above. And then like Mill of the Stone Women is at 56.
Midpoint between my floor and your ceiling is Thing from Another World at 46, which is bracketed by Wolfman and Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
The 41 Wolfman.
Yes.
Yeah. I think The Thing from Another World is very strong, but it is like, oh, vegetable aliens come to get us. And like, don't get me wrong, it's really good. That's why it's ranked at 46. Y'all know I fucking love The Wolfman. But Carnival of Souls at 44. I think if we want to speak to the way that Carnival of Souls and The Girl Who Knew Too Much spark and influence into the horror genre, I think that makes it a bit more comparable there rather than against like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, The Thing from Another World, The Wolfman. So I feel Carnival of Souls is probably stronger.
Yeah.
Because it feels more like holistically horror, whereas, as we've said, The Girl Who Knew Too Much is straddling a bit too many things.
I would agree.
What do you think about slotting this right below Carnival of Souls and above The Wolfman?
Well, the problem is that now that I'm looking at this section of the list, I'm like, oh, I could go lower. I do think the lowest I would go would be just above Mill of the Stone Woman. I think this is better than Mill of the Stone Women.
100%. But then Nosferatu is right there.
Yeah,
and that's, you're going up against a champion.
Yeah. So it's tough. I think, what do you think about this versus like Night of the Eagle?
Yeah. Also kind of conspiracy.
Mm-hmm.
But like its handling of witchcraft was so fun. And like the I guess it was like model work or like miniature work was so fun and so good. I'm
kind of leaning towards below Night of the Eagle, but above the Brain Eaters.
Yeah, I think that's fair because Brain Eaters is good, but it has those like bats, alien bats flying at your neck, right?
I feel like this Bava movie has to be better than a Bruno Vasoda movie.
Yeah, no, 100%. Even like X the Unknown is right here too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, this feels like a good spot.
Okay, so if we're agreed on this, then La Ragazza che Sapeva Troppo, or The Girl Who Knew Too Much, aka The Evil Eye, enters the list at number 51, below Night of the Eagle and above The Brain Eaters.
Not a bad showing. Especially considering like that's right between Bava's top ranked and middle ranked movie. Like,
for sure.
It really bodes well for the rest of his stuff that we're going to be seeing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because when I was doing research about this movie, I also kept coming across people saying like, yeah, The Girl Who Knew Too Much is definitely like the start of giallo, can be considered the first giallo movie, but his next one, Blood and Black Lace, that's definitive.
Yeah.
So I think like that's going to bode really well.
Yeah, and we're going to get Black Sabbath in between those two.
Oh, yes. Great. Well, folks, if you would like to see this list, you can go to our website, screamscenepodcast.com. There you can find links to the other episodes that we have mentioned, as well as our appeals box. If you would like to contest this or any other ranking, you can drop us a line through our Ask box on Tumblr. You can reach out over email at screamscenepodcast.com or follow us on Blue Sky.
Scream Scene updates every other Wednesday on SoundCloud and wherever else good podcasts can be found, really. We're kind of on all of them. If you want to make sure you never miss an episode, subscribe to our RSS feed. If you want to help support the show, you can share us around online. You can tell a friend about us. You can help promote the show to other people. Or you can head on over to our Patreon at patreon.com/Scream Scene Podcast, where you can become a patron of the night for as little as $1 a month. There's a whole library of bonus content that we've produced over the years that you can get access to. The $5 level gets you access to bonus audio. The $10 level gets you access to bonus writing. It's a lot of really cool stuff over there, and I super encourage you to take a look. So that's all over at patreon.com/Scream Scene Podcast.
Yeah, you can be like Karsa Torvald and join our Patreon. They joined at the $10 level, so they get access to everything. So super great. So Ben, what are we watching next week?
Next week, Sarah, we are watching Diary of a Madman, starring Vincent Price.
Ooh.
I think it's trying to be like a Poe movie, but it's not. It's like a competitor. And it's directed by Reginald Leborg.
Oh my God.
We have not seen our good friend Reggie in a while.
Yeah, it's been a long time, and he he's trying.
Yeah, so we'll see how things go with this like French period adaptation horror movie with Vincent Price.
Wonderful. We will see you then, creatures of the night.
Bye.
Bye.